What's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome to the All Around. I'm your gracious host, Dr. Anthony. Please tune in on Mondays at 6 p.m. for your entertainment purposes. We will hit current topics, old topics, and everything else in between. Be there or be square. Deuces, my loves. Hi, welcome to another great episode of the All Around. I'm your gracious host, Dr. Anthony, and we have an amazing show here for you tonight. And just let me say, I do apologize with, the absence and having the reruns of the shows. But, life is lifing all the time. And sometimes it just doesn't work out for me to be, on live. And we have to, rerun the shows. But we're, Mark and I are coming up with a plan so that we can have some updated shows and you guys can, get the heat, get the knowledge, and get the tea. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring my producer out, Mark Lee.
How you doing, beautiful lady? Looking lovely as always and everything. I know you've had a lot.
Well, I'm trying to put my lighting together, so it's it's
No
acting
problem.
a little funky over here.
No, you're doing well and everything like that. I don't know how the weather is where you are, but I know we're dealing with this storm weather, and there's definitely some serious rains that are coming here. I think this is Helene and all along those lines and everything like that. I don't know how you feel about it, but I sometimes wonder, and this is just me being a little bit sarcastic, so I'm gonna throw it out there, and you can tell me what you think. But as far as I know, there has never been a hurricane. Tawana, and there might have been a Hurricane Mark way back when, but I'm thinking about the people like Katrina and Helene and even Bertha and everything, and how they feel when something as rough as a hurricane is what is named after them, and all along those lines. So I don't know if you had any thoughts around this, because like I said, if there was a Hurricane Mark, it was a long time ago, and I've never heard of a Hurricane Tawana, even though we do know that you have a very volatile personality sometimes in a wonderful way and everything. So it could be a
Honestly,
hurricane.
there has never been a hurricane. It could be a Hurricane Tawana, you know what I'm saying? But, it's based off of race. I think they just randomly pick those names. So if we just happen to get one, we just happen to get it. But as far as, we getting black names or whatever, but Katrina is, it transcends race. So it doesn't necessarily mean black. It doesn't necessarily mean white. But, sometimes we can get those names. But I doubt we would ever get to the T's. Because hurricane season is about to end. So where are we now? We're at
I think
what
we're at
what
H
letter?
because I think this is like Hurricane
Okay.
Helena or something like that.
Yeah. So it never goes towards the end of the alphabet. Not saying that it can't happen or whatever, but I've never seen it go toward the end of the alphabet. So, I'm just, not hoping to get a hurricane named after me, because I would not want
Yeah,
someone to be in dire need in that capacity and things like that or whatever. So no.
well, I agree.
So,
Well,
but
speaking of
otherwise,
something that
how are you?
I'm doing good. Like I said, I've been missing talking to you and all along those lines, but we actually had some very interesting things. There was a movie shown here at Daytime that you would have enjoyed attending. It was called Blind Faith, the Repairers of the Breach, which is kind of that William Barber organization, and some other
Mhm.
churches were doing it, but it was really a takedown. And when I say it was a takedown of the moral majority and the Tea Party and some of those organizations that use religion in a negative way. And they even talked about how some of the things that we celebrate, like the Star Spangled Banner, God Bless America, and
Mhm.
In God We Trust on the dollar, actually came up in the 19th century, even though some of those people will have you believe that it was something that was going on with the founding fathers of this country, but apparently not, because as the moderators put it, some of those people were escaping serious religious persecution and all along those lines. So this is a more modern twist of everything. So we had that, and then we had some tap dancers, both adults, which would have been footnotes, as well as some kids, the North Carolina Youth Tap Ensemble, that were performing on Saturday. And then there's a banjo and biscuits, which will show the roots and even the black roots of bluegrass music and everything. And they did a organizational meeting, or get to know some of the organizers, on about 2 weeks ago. And I've got my street festival coming up for Durham next week. So there's a lot of things going on. There have been some health issues, not so much for myself, but since we've last talked, I have learned about the death of a mentor. I think I might have mentioned that on one of our past shows, because I found out kind of surprisingly when I was talking to a mutual friend and all in that space. But Dad, who has had his bypass kind of surgery, is doing quite well, and the doctors are going like, "You are not your average bear, your average 84-year-old,"
Mhm.
because he is recovering quite well and doing well in his recovery. And they're even talking about stepping him off of ICU and maybe putting him in a regular unit in the not too distant future. There was some concerns around blood count and other things, but they do seem to be quite pleased with the recovery that he is making and everything, because the surgery was this past Wednesday, but he's already off the ventilator and stuff like that. So that's some of the stuff that's going on in my life. I know you were concerned about your relatives there in Louisiana and some of what they were going on. And when we get to issues, and definitely want to hear what you got going on, but I'd love to hear your take on the debate, because as far as I'm concerned, Trump got handed his ass to him, and I just put it bluntly and everything, because I think that Kamala just kind of demolished him, and I don't think we've done a show since those debates. But I definitely want to hear your take, because I think that she just kind of like schooled him on how to do a debate, because he has no clue.
Well, he doesn't have a clue on, debate techniques and debate decorum and things like that or whatever. I feel that, he tries to use bullying and, intimidation tactics in terms of, speaking to people, talking about people, and then trying to, say, that she's incompetent and things like that. But clearly the person that's incompetent is, him. He really doesn't articulate himself very well. He has a poor understanding of the government. He has, poor knowledge of things. And, in that regard, but a lot of people are like, he's a successful businessman, but he's not a successful businessman. Everything that he has touched has pretty much turned to a piece of crap or whatever. He had Trump University, people paying all this money. He had to end up paying the money back. He bought the Taj Hotel in not Ocean City, but Atlantic City, and that went under. So he's notorious for not paying his bills and, things like that. But y'all want to entrust him in, running the country, where he has, like the Supreme Court in his hand, where they can get rid of, like certain protections and things like that. So no, he definitely got his behind handed to him, and he, so-called claiming he won, but you didn't win. All you did was spew lies and things like that or whatever. And then, when she asked if he had a plan, I have concepts of a plan. But you were the one that said on day one that you were going to, fix the economy. You were going to fix this. You were going to fix that. But it's clearly shown that you didn't do anything. You were riding off the coattail of President Obama in that election, and all the successes that the economy saw was from President Obama. It was not from him. So when they were saying that he was very successful, he was not very successful. The success came from, like I said, President Obama's from President Obama's presidency, not his. And we're still in the remnants of, I'm sorry, my phone was ringing. We're still in the remnants of, recovering from his presidency with the things that Vice President Kamala Harris and President Joe Biden are doing. And so, he's trying to say that, all of the, the inflation and stuff was a result of them. No, it was the result of him, because people fail to realize is that these Republican governors were sending migrant workers who were working the fields, who were, harvesting, food and produce, who were doing the construction. They were sending them out of the country, and then they were sending them in different areas. So we had no people to, harvest the fields. We had no people to do the construction. And so that made inflation rise, and that made, prices hit the roof. But, they're quick to not address that, but trying to say that, this is a result of the Democratic Party, which it is not in that regard. So no, he got his butt handed to him. And it clearly shows that he's incompetent, that he has no clue about anything. He does not care for the American people, and he has little respect for women, and he does not care for women, and he does not want women to be able to have any type of personal autonomy over their own, body and things like that or whatever, which is sad, because, I don't want anybody who is not experiencing anything that I'm experiencing to make decisions about me and my health and things like that or whatever. That's just a no-go for me.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, just really quickly along those same lines, there was another quote unquote attempt on Trump and everything. But I was just reading an article, and apparently the Secret Service acting director, Ron Rowe, said at a news conference, I guess it was last week and everything, or earlier today, it could have been last week because they got this press release wrong and everything, but saying that they were several hundred of yards ahead of Trump on Sunday when he spotted a gun barrel poking out from the tree line near the 6th green. And apparently this guy that was the gunman had been laying down in the weeds waiting to fire off a shot, which he never fired off a shot and everything. But don't they supposed to have people walking the grounds if it's somebody like that and everything? So how do you miss somebody laying in the ground for 12 hours and saying to me that that's a bad plan on Mr. Roos's plan as well, the person that apparently tried this thing? But I'm going like, you going to lay down in the ground for 12 hours, almost a half a day, and nobody's going to notice you? I think there's supposed to be some sort of security in some of these places, including a private golf course, but I've never owned a private golf course. I think I've been on one maybe in my life or twice, but not a lot and everything. But my understanding is there's supposed to be security there, so I don't get it.
But the thing is, it's also coincidental. You know, every time his poll numbers dip, he gets another assassination attempt on his life. You know what I'm saying? So honestly, I think it's all fake and they're staging it because, like you said, there is no possible way that, you know, somebody's going to be out there for 12 hours just laying in the bushes and things like that or whatever, and you not know that that person is there. And so do you have x-ray vision where you can see, you know, a distance that, you know, from where you were to where the gunman was, that you can see the barrel of the gun poking out of a bush? You know what I'm saying? So to me, it's just too coincidental, and it just doesn't make sense or whatever, you know? So, you know, like I said, I think it's, you know, him trying to stay relevant and trying to, you know, make people feel sorry for him and trying to make people, you know, want him as the next president. But, you know, I just don't think it's going to pan out, and he is going to lose in November because we the people are going to send a strong message that we don't need him and his services or whatever. But like I said, you know, they are supposed to canvass the grounds. They're supposed to, you know, do all this stuff hours in advance, but you allow, you know, a private person to, you know, get on the grounds, have a gun, he's pointing it at Trump, and, you know, things like that or whatever. Then y'all allow the person to get in the car, drive down the interstate, leave, and, you know, things like that or whatever. So to me, it just doesn't make sense. And even with the one that they said shot his ear, you have no scar marks. You know what I'm saying? If your ear was actually shot, you should be missing the top portion of your ear. Like, where is it, dude? You have no cosmetic surgery done. You have none of that done. When Mike Tyson bit old boy ear, he still has, you know, remnants of that bite or whatever. And we can see from the you know, incident that happened that took place with Trump. None of this is, you know, none of the things that they're saying is making sense. He doesn't have any scar marks, no scar tissue. And then I mean, just honestly speaking, if you got hit in the ear with the AR-15 semi-automatic rifle, those bullets are about this long or whatever. You mean to tell me that half of your head is not missing? You know what I'm saying? And your ear is still intact. So, you know, it just doesn't make sense or whatever. And, you know, like I said, I honestly believe that it's a scare tactic to try to get people to vote for him. But guess what, sir? We're not voting for you. We're going to send your ass packing and send you to jail.
Yeah, and all that thing about, like, I think Kamala said that he got his rejection letter and everything like that. I forgot the exact quote, but it was several million. It was really a play on The Apprentice, which was his show and everything, basically saying that we fired him and we're probably getting ready to fire him once again and everything. But I don't know. I was going to ask you about this because I don't think that they ever caught the person, even though I understand that they are. They did catch him. So they finally caught that person in Kentucky. So I couldn't figure that out either. You know, I do remember that incident a long time ago when the guy was caught in the mountains of North Carolina and everything, but they took a long time to catch him and everything. So sometimes these folks getting away for long periods of time is surprising. And we even know that there have been incidences where people have been caught like decades later and everything. But yeah, I sometimes wonder about as to how effective our law enforcement is doing, because I'm glad that they caught him, but that took them a while to finally catch up with that particular gentleman as well.
Well, and the other thing about it is, he wasn't black because his face is not plastered all over the media. And again, like I said, it just is all so coincidental that all of this is happening now, and things like that or whatever. Oh, he had a gun. They spotted the gun. No shots were fired, and things like that or whatever. And then even with the first one, how it just like magically disappeared off the TV with the with the news and stuff like that or whatever, because whenever we have like mass shootings and attacks and bombings and things, this stuff is matriculated through the media 24/7, consistently around the clock for days, weeks, months, and things like that or whatever. This is not happening with Trump. So I know that it doesn't feel right, and I know that it's not right or whatever. So I just feel in my heart of hearts that all of this is staged, and trying to get him into the presidency, trying to save his ass. But no, sir, we're sending you to jail.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's definitely something worth talking about. And all along those lines, what do you say to those folks that? Because one of the criticisms I've been hearing lately, and some people get upset, but the woman does have a variety of backgrounds and everything. But one of the things that people keep trying to pick on is this notion that Kamala doesn't sound the way that she used to, and that she's changed her accents and all of this, which I think is another form of BS and everything. But I just wanted your take, because you do hear a lot of people that are always wanting to tease her. I think it may be even in one of the Black Caucus appearances, they were talking about like these kind of accents and everything. But as one that has done media, I do know that sometimes, depending on the excitement of what you're talking about and what's going on, people can sometimes have changes in their voice inflections and all along those lines. But I just wanted your take on this notion, because they're talking about her quote unquote new accent and everything, and they brought it up even though
the
Congressional
thing about
Black
it is she
Caucus.
doesn't have a new accent. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? She sounds completely the same. Just like when I go home to Louisiana, my Louisiana accent is so prevalent and things like that when I come back. So you would know that I have gone home to Louisiana because I sound like, I have been in the South and things like
Right.
that or whatever. I don't sound like I'm from here, but you can tell my accent when I go home and come back when I have spent significant time. And to be honest with you, I think they're just reaching, and depending on the microphone and the system or whatever, your voice will fluctuate. You will
Right.
sound different, and depending on if you're a nasal, because I know some of the times when I'm on here, I've apologized because I'm nasal, I'm congested, and I don't sound the same. So to be honest with you, I think they're just reaching and things like that or whatever. And the thing about it is, what accent? She's never really spoken with an accent. She has always
Right.
spoken clear, direct English when she has articulated herself. So there was no accent. And she was never raised in her mother's home country. She was never raised in her father's home country. So therefore, there's no accent. She speaks with an American accent. And all people don't sound ethnic. Just like I don't sound white. I sound very ethnic. I sound very black, and that's what I am. And I'm not trying to change my voice because I'm doing social media. No, that's who I am. Because I just posted a video today, which I want to get into or whatever, about workplace, calling colleagues, coworkers, and things like that or whatever. So no, I don't sound the same in different capacities, depending on my mic, my media setup, and things like that or whatever. So it just depends. And honestly, I just think they're reaching for something or whatever that's not even there. And that's just the bottom line, period.
No, I agree with you. They're reaching. Speaking of reaching, and then I know you got some things you want to get off your shoulders and mind as well. But there is a basketball player that apparently, even though he was part of the iconic institution and everything, is wondering how can you not miss me and everything. So as when he was failed to be recognized at Madison Square Garden, and he sounded off in that because we're talking about Patrick Ewing. He said everybody in this building should know who the hell I am, and I kind of agree with him on that, because the New York Knicks, once among the top most storied franchises in NBA history, lost their prominence after failing to advance past the second round for nearly 2 decades. But definitely he went by there, and apparently got a run-in recently and all in that space, even after having retired from the league as the Knicks all-time leading scorer and being a coach for, or an assistant for, a number of franchises, but apparently including the coach at Georgetown and everything. But apparently the folks there in Madison Square Garden couldn't figure out who this big man that's about 7 feet tall is and everything. But I sometimes wonder about that, when they cannot recognize somebody, and particularly somebody everybody that was a core, because even the Big East, where he coached at when he was at Georgetown, played some of their games at Madison Square Garden. So how do you manage to miss him? And there was another incident sometime back with Charles Oakley, who was ejected from, I believe, that same arena or one of those arenas and everything. So I'm trying to figure out how these guards are getting paid these decent sized money, maybe not athlete money, but still, you're supposed to know who some of the stars are from your area and everything. So I just wanted your take on this, because I heard that they were
Not necessarily. I mean,
okay.
people feel this sense of entitlement, like, oh, I did this and I did that, and you're supposed to know who I am. I don't supposed to know who you are. You know what I'm saying? If I'm not, if I'm not in that era or whatever, because remember, we're older generation, so quite
Right.
naturally we know who they are. But you have to look at the people who are inside those arenas at this point. We have the millennials, we have
Mhm.
younger children, we have people in between those ages and things like that or whatever. So no, not everybody is going to know your history. Not everybody is going to know who you are. Not everybody is going to know, that you coached at Georgetown and, things like that. Not everybody, has that experience. And, it just baffles me that, people has this sense of entitlement that, oh, you're supposed to know who I am. No, I'm not. I don't care who you are. You know what I'm saying? But it's just a sense of entitlement. That's just like this lady. She was a model or whatever, and she went to the Met Gala and she felt some type of way because no one knew who she was. But okay, if people are not in that arena and they don't support those venues that you are frequenting, and they don't, they're not into models and things like that. Not saying that the Met Gala is not, but they wouldn't know who you are. She felt some kind of way and she didn't want to do the Met Gala anymore. But sweetheart, we don't know who you are. If you're not a brand name like Kylie Jenner, or what's her name, sister name that models, Kendall Jenner, Tyra Banks, Naomi Campbell, those brand names or whatever, we don't know who you are. You may be a successful model. You could have been a very successful basketball player, but you have to look at the generation of folks that are in those arenas at this point. They probably don't know who you are. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because, like I said, we are of the older generation.
Mhm.
So quite naturally, we grew up watching Patrick Ewing. We
Mhm.
grew up watching Larry Bird. We grew up
Right.
watching those people, Magic Johnson. So quite naturally, we know who they are. We could recognize them in different capacities. But a lot of people, they're not sports gurus, and they're not going to know your history. They're not going to follow you like that unless they're, a true fan. So, the sense of entitlement is just, really baffling to me. It's just
Well,
crazy.
speaking of the sense of entitlement and everything, coming back to our favorite talking point and everything, and I did want to hear your thoughts about a legend, but before I get to that legend and everything, well, actually two legends, but before I get to those two legends and everything, I just wonder, there is no doubt in my mind that whether he wants to claim that he is more moral or less moral than other people, that Mr. Trump, from President Trump, does like to have his little side ladies. And I mean, there's a number of politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, that have done that and everything. But I am convinced, no matter what they say, and people will probably disagree with me, that the latest woman that is in Trump's circle, and I think that they're having some sort of relationship, is Miss Loomer and everything. But they will swear that they're just good friends, and that even though she's a conspiracy theorist and one of those white conspiracy theorists, that there is nothing going on. But you don't take your wife to some of these events, but you're going to fly Miss Loomer on there to these events, but there's not supposed to be any sort of hanky panky going on. But what's your take on that?
Honestly, I really don't care if he has whatever going on, because clearly these white folks changed the narrative and changed the criteria for whomever they wanted. Because let President Obama had an extramarital affair, they would have persecuted him and they never would have put him in office and things like that. But this man has cheated. He's a known cheater. He's a known misogynistic pig and things like that or whatever, and they don't care. Excuse me. And they have problems with P. Diddy being represented, especially Lady Gaga has problems with P. Diddy being represented by the same law firm. But you didn't say anything about Trump, sexually assaulting women and grabbing them by the pussies and things like that or whatever. So, anything that, with these white folks don't surprise me. And honestly, to be honest with you, I don't care one way or the other, because they're going to persecute who they want to persecute, and they're going to overlook who they want to overlook. Because clearly this man has 34 felony counts or whatever. But if a black person had one or a misdemeanor or whatever, they would have, it would have been totally different. You know what I'm saying? So honestly, to be honest with you, I don't care what they have going on and who they have going on with. You know what I'm saying? That's between him and his wife and whomever else, honestly.
Well, but speaking of who's got stuff going on, apparently there is a new video that is resurfaced about one of our candidates, meaning one of the candidates from North Carolina and everything, but in a newly unearthed video from 2022, so we're not talking that long ago, North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson scoffs at the idea that young women should have access to birth control and repeatedly waving his hand near his groin, said they just need to get this under control. So this was doing an appearance at the Hilltop Baptist Church in Thomasville, North Carolina, and everything. And definitely, I know he's had this notion of 0 weeks for abortion and a number of other things, and he's definitely taken aim at programs that provide sexual education and birth control for young women. So right now he's losing, and hopefully he will continue to lose, because I definitely think he has got some serious issues around sexism and homophobia and other things out there. But just your take on this idiot that we are running down here in North Carolina. And yes, for those that are wondering, I did say that word idiot, because as far as I'm concerned, that's what he is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. You know what I'm saying? But the thing about it is you talk about, you want to be pro-life and you want to be pro this and you want to be pro that or whatever. But then, when women are talking about, birth control pills are used for more than just controlling, reproduction or whatever. It helps women with, like hormone problems and, other issues and things like that. So that's why it's real key that people who do not have these symptoms and are not suffering from these things are not the ones in positions of power, because they don't understand how, a woman body works, and they don't understand how, having the proper medical care and the proper procedures done is, affecting a woman's life. It's affecting everything about, the female and, things like that or whatever. So it's real important that we get these people who think that women can't make decisions about their bodies out of office and things like that or whatever, because it's just, flat out insane that they're trying to come for women and tell them what they can and cannot do with their bodies. Because my thing is, if they're making determinations about our bodies, then we should make determinations about theirs. So when they are, having these inappropriate thoughts and get caught of having these inappropriate thoughts and these inappropriate urges, we should castrate them. We should automatically give them vasectomies when they receive a certain age. If they're not taking care of their children, we should automatically give them vasectomies to stop them from having children. But I bet that the conversations in the paradigm of everything would shift in if we get on the bandwagon and say that we need to make decisions regarding men reproductive, body parts and private body parts and things like that or whatever. Then, everybody will try to come to the table. Oh, well, you're not a man. You can't make that decision. Well, hell, you ain't no goddamn woman. So you shouldn't be making a decision about a woman and what she has going on, period.
No doubt about that. Before we get to some more serious issues, I know we definitely had a lot of them in this first half an hour and everything. There were two legends, and I know that you're familiar with both of them, that unfortunately passed away. And all along those lines, actually, there was a third one, because there was a woman in the ballet world that passed away as well, even though she was less known, that being the model or the dancer from Sierra Leone. But definitely, maybe people may not know her as much as they know the two I'm here to mention, which is James Earl Jones and Frankie Beverly. So I just wanted your thoughts on them. And if you have any thoughts on the dancer, and I'll try to come up with her name because it's not coming off the top of my head, but I do know she was from Sierra Leone. But any thoughts around those?
I think her name is Michelle. She was adopted by a white woman or whatever when she went over into, Africa and things like that or whatever. And the sad part about it is her adoptive mother passed away 2 days after she did. But, people have to be careful on those balconies or whatever, because she fell to her death, untimely death based off of an accident. So, I do feel bad for her and things like that. And I feel bad for her family. But, people just got to be careful with, doing these extreme pictures and extreme sports and things like that or whatever. So, my thing is to each his own. If you want that adrenaline rush and you want that, you have to suffer the consequences. And I hate that happened to her or whatever. But, it was just tragic. And it was unfortunate that she, was out there and fell to her death over, I think trying to take pictures and things like that. As far as James Earl Jones is concerned, and Frankie Beverly, we have to understand that we are living in tumultuous times, and these people, we had them when we grew up. So, we're now becoming the senior citizens. So, we're pre-senior citizens, and we're about to become the senior citizens. And, our older generation, I thank God for letting us have them as long as we had them or whatever, but they're dying off. And we have to, prepare ourselves for that or whatever. And, I just thank God that we were blessed to to keep them for, 94 years and 77 to 80 years. And, we were blessed with their, artistry and the things that they brought to, the cinema and cinematic, talents and things like that or whatever. But our older generation is getting older, and we have to realize that, and we have to respect that. And that's just the bottom line, even with our parents and, family members or whatever. They're not going to be around forever. They're going to expire. I tell my son that all the time, which is, my nephew or whatever, but I call him my son because I raised him, that, I put things in place to make sure that he's going to be okay, because I'm not going to be here all the time. I'm not going to be here forever. And you got to be able to handle your business, as a man, and, things like that or whatever. So, just teaching and preparing them or whatever, because that, death is inevitable. That's something that we can't fight and things like that. Is it unfortunate? Yes. Do the human side of us, have questions about, when people die? Yes. But the spiritual side understands that, there's a time that, your sun rises, and then there's a time when your sun sets. And unfortunately, our elders, their sun is setting, and they're going into, transition into, the elderly state and things like that or whatever, and they're passing on and going to the next life. And we're
No doubt about that. No doubt about that.
The ranks.
Yeah. No doubt about that. With two things that you said really touched home in one I got to mention another one, because we lost, I believe it was yesterday, another legend. His brother was definitely more known than he, and his sister, but Tito Jackson has also joined that ranks of the ancestors and all along those lines. I actually had the pleasure of seeing him perform here, meaning the Hayti Heritage Center, about 6 years ago, because it would have been about 2018 or something. It was part of our Bull Durham Blues Festival, so it was before the pandemic, and ironically, he was performing with the B.B. King Band and all along those lines, because this was after B.B. had passed and everything. But definitely it was good to see him, and he definitely gave a great show and everything. But what was resonating with what you said is that I told you that Dad had his surgery, and it definitely has gone well in the recovery and everything. But they get a get together, he and his lady love, at her house and everything on Sunday that I went to. And one of the things that Dad said, because we all spoke about, him going into surgery and wanting him to recover as quickly as he could and everything. But he said something similar to what you just said, which is that we know that we are all here for a finite time, and all along those lines. So while he was going in with a positive attitude and is definitely doing well, as I've said several times on this show and other shows, he also looked at me, and he also looked, I believe, more at his grandkids, my nephews, and basically was not admonishing them, but telling them that if they had things that there were things that he knew that they wanted to do, and that we were going to do those things, that we needed to work on getting them done now versus trying to procrastinate on them, because nobody knows how much longer we're going to be here on this planet. It's kind of his notion that if you're going to do some of these projects that we want to work on together, let's not just talk about it, but let's do it, because we don't know how long we've got here on this planet.
Oh no, and that's one of the things that I tell my mom, because anytime I give her something nice, she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna save it." I'm like, "No, use it." You know what I'm saying? Don't save anything, because we, life is not promised. We don't know how long we're going to be here. I could expire tomorrow. You could expire tomorrow, and other people are going to be using your stuff, whereas you saved it, and things like that or whatever. So we have. Although we do prepare for the future, but we have to live for the here and now. And again, you mentioned Tito Jackson or whatever. Again, these are our older generation. He was 77 when he passed away. And remember, we grew up with these people. We grew up as children knowing who they are and things like that or whatever. So now we are the pre-senior citizens going into senior citizens. So we are the new generation and the next generation of the elderly. And our elderly folks are, passing on to the next life, and we have to step up and we have to take over. Are we prepared? You're never really prepared for death or whatever, but at the same time, you still have to prepare. You know what I'm saying? So, it's hurtful, but it's a reality. It's something that we can never evade.
Yeah, that's very much true. You said there were some other things that you wanted to get to, and there might be some things like gun control and things that I'll hit as well, but I didn't want to, it's your show. Do you want to be dominated?
No, you're good. You always ask me great questions, and I always have great responses. So today we had a professional development day. That's why I'm dressed like this. I'm not really in a professional state, but I'm dressed, dressed down and dressed for the occasion or whatever. So during our professional development, one of the areas that we focused on was core values. And so I pointed out that, you know, a lot of people chose core values that were personal to them instead of workplace core values. And so a lot of people were confused. They were like, well, they're one and the same. And I was like, no, I don't think they're one and the same. You know, core values for the workplace for me is totally different from my core values to the workplace at home. And a lot of people chose family. And I saw that word, you know, matriculated across the board a lot or whatever. And so I told them straight up, I was like, I don't consider you my family. We work together. I'm cordial. I'm nice. I can hang out with you. I can speak to you. I can do all those things, but you're not my family. You know, I don't call you after work. I don't, you know, text you in that capacity. I don't do any of those things. We have a workplace relationship. And then one gentleman was like, you know, I'm consistent across the board. I'm the same. I said, no, I'm the same. I'm consistent. You know, I don't care if I'm in heaven or hell, but, you know, my workplace decorum is different from my home decorum and, you know, things like that. So one of the video that I posted today is, do you consider your colleagues, your coworkers, and the people that you work with family? And for me, that's an epic no, because I just don't, you know, I don't mix my personal life with my professional life. That stays separate. And that's just me personally. So I just wanted to, you know, get your opinion in, you know, TV land out there in social media land. It's posted on my personal page. Do you consider your colleagues family in the workplace? Your colleagues, your coworkers, and other people that you work with, do you consider them family? Mark, do you consider yours family?
Well, I was actually going to answer that because I think a lot depends on the environment of the business and everything. Because I do know that, you know, as you know, because I've told you this and I don't hide it. Shucks, I'm reporting here from there today. I work at a small nonprofit and everything. So in that sense, there, because I know that even my boss here tries to breed this kind of family atmosphere because it is a smaller environment and we are supposedly working on a common cause. Now, something being like a school, I would definitely not consider them family. And I have worked corporations a long time ago when I worked shipping and receiving for what was then Glaxo, even though it's now GSK or whatever the heck they call themselves now and everything. But that was a big organization. I've developed some friendships that have become lifelong friends and everything. But I would definitely think that in a bigger environment, that notion of creating family is harder to do. But I do think that some organizations are created in such a way that you almost have to have that family environment because y'all are working on a common goal and things along those lines. And even my boss here and some of our folks here, we do consider ourselves a family and even try to, I mean, we just did might have been doing the times that we've been off the air because I think doing reruns because I want to say it was about a month ago that we did a team building exercise at a bed and breakfast, a black-owned bed and breakfast at that Moorhead Manor and everything. But that was part of what we were trying to do was create this sense of unity and team and everything. So in that sense, it can be family if you're trying to build a team unit and everything. So, but I mean, in terms of like going to bed for them or going to the fence for them the way that you would your birth family, then yes, I would say that is a difference. But I can't see the attitude of having a family attitude. Now, am I going to take it now? You know, we're taking a bullet for my personal family, which I would probably do like for Malik and my nephews. I don't know that I would do that for any of my coworkers here, and that's just me being honest and everything. But I can also understand the nature of wanting to create a family-like environment.
No, I mean, I get that or whatever, but me personally, I can do the team building. I understand all that, but when I'm team building with people at work, that's just what it is. I'm team building with people at work. And team building means that, you know, we're building a cohesive environment where we're working together cohesively and, you know, we're coming together, you know, to have discussions and to, you know, work and talk to things. But I still don't perceive them as being family because, you know, to me, there is just a level of, you know, separatism when it comes to, you know, workplace decorum and, you know, family decorum. And that's just something that I don't do. I don't cross the boundary lines when it comes to my personal life and to my professional life, because I have known that, you know, people go back and they try to use things against you in your professional life that they find out about you in your personal life. So my personal life stays separate. Even my social media, I give you a part of me on social media. I give you my social media life, but you don't know my personal private life. So you know my social media character, but you don't know any other part of me. And like I was telling the people at work, you know, there's levels to all of us or whatever. I'm consistent. You know, I don't change, but at the same time, I'm not giving you a firsthand look into me personally because you don't get that at the professional job.
No,
You get
but
the professional me, and that's it.
no, and there's definitely a lot of code switching that goes on in a number
Hmm.
of jobs and everything like that. But the flip side of what you're saying, and I can agree with you on that because I got myself in some trouble way back when on a certain radio station that I was part of and everything was, as you know, because you come from Louisiana, you
Hmm.
can definitely tell a deep story with blues music because blues music
Hmm.
is very emotional and it can tell a lot of stories. And I remember that decades ago, or a decade or two ago, when I was dating a certain young lady and would play certain blues songs. And I don't know
Hmm.
if I've ever shared this story with you, but people probably knew until I got smart and stopped doing it whether we were having a good relationship or a bad relationship. Because when the things were going good, I was probably playing a lot of the hoochie coochie, let's get down kind of blues music and everything like
Hmm.
that. And if things were going bad, I was probably playing a lot of that I can't stand your ass blues music as well and everything. So there was a time frame that the blues music was probably telling too much of the narrative of what
Hmm.
was going on in those particular relationships that you're talking about. But like I said, I got older, I got wiser, and even as I in my DJing career, I realized that I could play the music in such a way that I could play those songs that I enjoyed and people not be able to tell. But yeah, there was probably a time frame that during that time that people probably knew what was going on in my life based on what was being played and everything. If there was a lot of going down on you kind of music. And yes, I did say that if anybody's wondering and everything along those lines. And yeah, things were probably going good in the relationship and everything. But then if I was playing a lot of I'm about to stab you and Crossroads music, things probably weren't going good at that time and everything. But I got smart. I realized I liked both of those kind of song narratives, and I might play one when the other mood was going, and vice versa, and all along those lines. So I got a little smarter in my technique. I'll just put it that way and everything. But I do have a question based on a Facebook post that I saw because I am in a lot of different Facebook groups, and it kind of is what we're talking about. But what is your take on friendship and relationships? Because what the post was talking about that I saw, and it might have been in one of my 50s and 60s single groups and everything, was when you are dating somebody, should you have to abandon all of your female friends? So what the person was asking was that if you are involved in a relationship and you get in a significant relationship, and let's say it goes down the marriage avenue, because I know that you have mentioned having a friend or two during the time that we've had this show. Now we know what that status is now. That's up to you to reveal or not reveal and all of those lines. But you have said that there have been times when there have been relationships and everything. And should one of those relationships turn into a marriage, would we have to abandon this show because you couldn't be friends with me anymore and all along those lines? Because that's what they were trying to say, was that they had to get rid of all of their friends of the opposite gender, whatever the gender was. And I was wondering your take on that.
Well, first of all, if my thing is, I let folks know from the jump. I have male friends that's been in my life since I was a child. My male friends are going to continue to be there, whether you are in my life or not. I don't care if we're married, whatever. We separated, we're roommates. My male friends are not going anywhere. My female friends are not going anywhere. These people have grown with me. These people have been through tough times with me. So why should I give my solid up for something that's a maybe? If
Right.
you can't come and get in and integrate into my world and accept my friends like I would accept your friends, then that's a red flag for me. And I have ended relationships because people are like, well, you can't talk to this person, you can't talk to that person because I feel some type of way. That's because you feel some type of way. It has nothing to do with me and my friends. My friends have never disrespected me. My friends have never crossed those boundary lines. My friends have never done any of those things. So, for you to come into my life and say that I have to give up my friends to have you, no, you'll be gone before they'll be gone. So I don't even entertain conversations like that or whatever. So for a person who's insecure and things like that or whatever, I'm not the person for you because my friends ain't going nowhere. You know what I'm saying? I'm still going to be friends. I'm still going to communicate with them. I'm still going to talk to them on the phone like I normally do. I'm still going to hang out with them. If they want to come over and we watch movies, I'm still going to do that, but I'm not going to disrespect you. But, at the end of the day, if you can't respect my relationships with my friends and people that were in my life prior to you, then, you and I are not an item. We can't be together because my thing is I'm a grown ass goddamn woman. You're a
No,
grown ass man.
hey, a
And we
lot
don't
of
have time for games and BS or whatever, because if a person is going to cheat, they're going to do it regardless. If it's a friendship there, or if it's a friendship not there, and 9 times out of 10, you're not cheating with your friends anyway. You're cheating with somebody else. So again, for me, if a person, tells me that I can't have my friends who I've been friends with since day one or whatever, that sends red flags to me, and that means that I don't need you in my life and I don't want you in my life, and I'm not doing no negotiables and things like that. It is what it is. Period.
No,
Is
I
either
hear
you
you.
accept
No,
it or you don't.
no, I hear what you're saying, but the two things that I'd be curious to hear your thoughts around this and everything. I do sometimes think that in relationships, particularly with men and women, folks get too caught up in the romance of relationships and they automatically are ready to become committed in the relationship way before it is time for the commitment. Because definitely heard people, and I've even been guilty of it, that are talking about that being their king or queen in their life, and they're just now getting to know the person, so they haven't even really had a chance to develop those kind of feelings, and in some cases they might not have even had the intimacy and the mind intimacy, because to me that's totally separate than the physical intimacy and everything. But I just wonder, do you think that because of the instant nature of society that we have gotten too quick to people to automatically want to fall in love quickly or to fall in like quickly and all along those lines? Because I do see a number of people, and I know even in my life I've been guilty of it, that are ready to have likeness or friendship go to the love standpoint. And I sometimes wonder, maybe you're rushing it too fast. But you're a teacher, and that you probably even have to have that conversation with some of your high school kids. So what is your take on that?
Honestly, I don't have those conversations with my high school kids because their personal relationships has nothing to do with me. I strictly, have conversations about academia, and now that I'm SGA, about SGA, or what's going on inside of the school. Personal conversations, you're referred to the counselor. But as far as adult conversations are concerned, who am I to tell you that you can't love a person the first time you see them? You know what I'm saying? I can't say that you can't love that person and you don't want to be with that person. If that works for you in your relationship, that works for you in your relationship. You don't have to live by societal norms based off of what other people think, and based off of the quickness or the longevity of a relationship. Because just because a person met today and are married within 6 months does not mean that their relationship is not going to last. Because there are relationships where people have met one day and they're married 2 to 3 months later, and they are in their 20th and 30th year of marriage, whereas you've been in longer relationships in 3, 4, 5 years, and you waited to get married, and your relationship ends in divorce within 2 years. So longevity in that sense does not have, it does not really weigh in on the positivity or the negativity of like a relationship or whatever. It depends on the two people. Marriage is hard work. We already know that marriage is hard work, and if you want to put that work into being married and staying married, then I say go for it. You know what I'm saying? Marriage is not for everybody. Everybody doesn't want to be married. Everybody doesn't want to be in a relationship. You have to know who you are as a person and what you want, and you have to be clear of who you are as a person and what you want, and set those standards from day one. My thing is, don't lie to a person and tell them, oh, I want this, I want that, and then you have this person believing that's what you want, and then years later, then you come back and be like, well, I never wanted that from the jump, but this is what you said, this is what you communicated. You know what I'm saying? Just keep it 100, just keep it real, and it won't be no fallout. People respect you more when you dive in and go all gung ho, instead of you just playing games and lying about what you want, lying about your feelings and things like that. Because I'm like, be upfront with me.
Well,
Don't play games with me. Be upfront. Let me know
no,
from jump. Let me know what I'm dealing with, so I'll know how to handle myself, and I'll know, give me a choice, but
but
don't make a decision
being,
for me.
yeah, but
Yes.
people being upfront and all along those lines, because I've actually run into this at least once or twice. It's not something that I regularly run into, because I don't usually go for the bad girl type and all along those lines. But I was just wondering, but I do have some friends that have gone for the bad guy type and everything among my lady friends and everything. What is your take? Because there are some people that get excitement over this notion of somebody that has been in the system, and we do know that the system can be corrupt, and there can be reasons that people went into the system that might not even be always their fault and everything. But what is your notion, even in your own life, as to whether that is a hard no, or whether that is something that it depends on the situation? You got to look at the situation individually and all along those lines, or do you pretty much rule out anybody that has been through the system, meaning the penal system and all along those lines? So what is your take on that? Because like I said, I've dealt with this a couple of times, but not the last couple of times were more recent. But just because as you get older, you find more things that are happening in your life, but everything like that. I just wanted your take on that notion of people having made mistakes, and whether that's something that you could handle, or is that just a hard no?
I mean, to each his own, you know what I'm saying? Speaking for me personally, if a person, regardless if you made a mistake or not, you go into the system, I'll let you know right up front. I'm not writing to you. I'm not sending you no money. I'm not doing any of that stuff because you had a choice at the end of the day. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Now, after you have committed your, time and paid your debt to society, that's something different or whatever. But, like I said, to each his own. Is whatever you want, in terms of relationships and in terms of, your goals and, things like that, because everybody is not compatible. Everybody's not equally yoked and stuff like that or whatever. But I know for me, that's not what I'm looking for or whatever. But, I'm not, totally against it because you never know who God is going to put in your path and who God is
Right.
going to put in your life and things like that or whatever. But like I said, if we're already in a relationship and you're doing dumb shit and you get arrested and you go to the pen, you can consider that relationship over because I'm not doing any of that stuff. You're not calling me collect. You're not, I'm not putting money on your books. I'm not doing any of that stuff because you had a choice to be an adult and to make adult decisions without doing anything illegally. And like I
No.
said, if we have met and this is something that's in your past and you're upfront about it and things like that, give me the option to say, yeah, I want to continue with this, or no, I don't want to continue with this or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But like I said, some people, like the bad guy type or whatever. They like that persona. They like, guys who have been incarcerated and things like that or whatever. But that's just not who I am, and that's just not, what I want or whatever. But again, when you're going through life, you change, you grow up, and then your wants and your needs and your standards change. And I think that's just where I am. My wants, my needs, and standards has changed or whatever. So that's not something that I want to deal with, and that's not something that I want to be around or whatever. But like I
No,
said, to each his own. Whatever
teacher
you
only
like is
like
what you
that.
like, and things like that or whatever. And I
No, and I
can't
agree
tell
with,
you what
yeah, and I
they
agree with what you
like.
just said. I agree with what you just said because if they are doing dumb stuff now, meaning getting themselves caught up in that stuff now, then yeah, they are totally like you. They are totally off my list and everything. Now I've had some friends, including some male friends that are buddies because I don't dance that way and everything, that have definitely had some bad things in their life and they have corrected their life. So
Mhm.
I can see that, and I one of them actually is one of our major motivational speakers, and he is married, and his wife is a motivational speaker and a religious person, and they are a wonderful couple and probably will be together 25, 30 years, if not longer, because they've had kids together. But he acknowledges the mistake he made, and I can't remember whether it was an assault or whether he may have even taken a person's life and everything. But he acknowledges that as part of his past and
Mhm.
doesn't do anything currently. If anything, he's trying to get people out of that lifestyle. So that's
Mhm.
what I'm saying. That if they are made some changes in their life, or if they acknowledge the mistakes that they made, or even in some cases the court system can jam people up as well, then that is a whole other matter. So I can give some people some little bit of leeway if I understand the story of what's going on. But I'm also with you that I am not going to deal with a person that is currently in that environment and is doing dumb stuff in this environment now. But yeah, they got caught up in something stupid. Maybe they even took somebody out because they were being assaulted and everything. Then I can maybe give them a little bit of more leeway than I would others.
Mhm.
But that's
And again, like I said, people like who they like. They fall in love with who they want to fall in love with. But that's just not something that I want to be engaged with or whatever. So I'm choosing different. And if I have to be alone for the rest of my life or whatever, then so be it. That's just the way it is. But I'm not going to drop my standards just because you flying into my DMs or you sliding into my inbox or you on my Facebook or you sending me text messages and things like that. I don't care if I'm single from here until the world ends. That's what I choose to do, and that doesn't mean that I want to be engaged with you or anybody else, and that's just the bottom line. But again, like I said, my social media persona is my social media persona, so you cannot say that what I post on my page on a daily basis has any direct link to me. If I post something on my page, it's because I think other people will get benefit out of it and things like that. And I've noticed that even when I post things about being single or whatever, referring to single women and things of that nature or whatever, I'm getting a lot of oh, do you need to talk, or I'm here for you, or I've been trying to date you for so long. I don't care what you've been trying to do. That has nothing to do with me. I'm just posting. It's social media, and that's exactly what it is. So like I said before, to each its own. And whatever you decide to do is what you decide to do, because your likes and your tastes are not mine. My standards may be, well, I know my standards are different from what you want and things like that or whatever, and they're not going to be reflective of you.
Yeah, that makes sense. The last thing I was going to get to, just really quickly, what is your take on, because everybody's excited because I guess Caitlin broke these records, and unfortunately Angel got hurt, and I don't think Angel's team is going to make the playoffs, even though they may get a better pick next time, and maybe even have a stronger chance of making it. But I do think that the team, the Fever, the team that Caitlin is part of, will make it, but I don't think that they'll go personally far in the playoffs, even if they make it. Maybe they'll get past the first round, but I think they might even get eliminated in the first round. But what is your take on what's going on with the WNBA in this 5 minutes that we've got left and everything? So I just know your thoughts, because that's been another thing that people have been talking quite a bit about, is what's going on with the WNBA.
Well, I mean, people are going to be people, regardless if it's Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark is going to be the next two and things like that or whatever. So quite naturally, Caitlin Clark is a good athlete and things like that. I'm not a fan of hers or whatever, but, like I said, she was thrust into the spotlight, after, Angel Reese did this and, did the Tony Yayo and, things like that or whatever. And they were saying that, she made basketball popular, the WNBA. But I've been going to the WNBA games long before Caitlin Clark became drafted by a WNBA team or whatever. So if she makes it to, rookie of the year, more power to her. I hate my girl got injured and she's out of the running and things like that or whatever, but she'll come back stronger. She proved her point. She proved that she's a great player and that she can handle her business and things like that or whatever. So it's nothing left to be said.
Yep, I agree with you on that and everything. I don't know if there's anything else you want to cover in the 4 minutes that we've got, but we've had another successful show talking about all kinds of fun things, and we're getting ready to have Maxine and her show, which deals with business and everything, coming up at the 7:00 hour. But as always, it's great seeing you and everything. I'm getting back to the Santa Claus mode, but the next time you see me, this will be cut again, because it is about time for the barber to see me on Wednesday, because I try to see him at least once a month, if not more, and everything. But I've already made the appointment, and I've got, like I said, that street festival, so don't want to be out there on the street festival thinking like everybody thinks I'm Saint Nick. So it will be a little bit on the trimmed down side and all along those lines. But as always, I love that smile in those glasses of yours. It's been a fun conversation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't really have anything else that we need to go into or whatever, but we can end, here, because I do have contractors in the house, so that I need to go down and have conversations with him. And that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day or whatever. So, yeah. So, we can just end it, and, the clock on the wall says that's all. We only have like 3 minutes anyway. So I look forward to, talking to you and having more conversations on next week and, more topics and things like that or whatever. So deuces, my loves.
Sounds good.
What's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome to the All Around. I'm your gracious host, Dr. Anthony. Please tune in on Mondays at 6 p.m. for your entertainment purposes. We will hit current topics, old topics, and everything else in between. Be there or be square. Deuces, my loves.